Hello, this is Daniel Raymond, the voice behind Ray's Guide, and now that the internet has digested CitizenCon reviews, summaries, and AI-generated accolades and denigrations, it is time for digging into the actual analysis of the content, including the extra tough bits about what should have been there but wasn't. And I'm going to start with base building, not simply because I have an interest in the system, but also a firm real-world background to base it on. And what they demonstrated was a simple plop and build methodology. And if all you are going to be building is a proverbial fishing cabin in the woods, then that is all you're going to need. And for those simple cases, it must be possible to accomplish it as not significantly more complicated as that. However, the actual measure of this system isn't going to be whether you can build a fishing cabin in the woods, but whether your large org can execute a massive base with shared effort and to have it be, at the end, efficient, functional, and defensible. That takes a process and people with particular skills, and the game needs to support that process. Just taking a whole bunch of players and give them the ability to plop down and build at will on a site is going to result in a chaotic, non-functional, and indefensible mess, which of course will result in the org members' interest in the base project crashing. And actually, even if you are building a personal hideout, you should be following the same process, although perhaps not needing to do so in such a formal manner. When building a personal hideout, you will be playing all the roles, but on a much larger base. Not everyone is interested in doing every role, and even more so, not everyone is good at it. Each part of the process requires different skills. Sure, in a demo, they can show a massive base just being built by slapping things down as if they happen, but that's just a demo. In the chaos of real life and the chaos of groups of real people, the result will be absolute chaos and not at all functional or efficient. So I'm going to, like the Sandworm Assault presentation at CitizenCon, make this a narration about a team of 4 members. Or, in a really big base, this would probably be 4 teams, and their actions are more or less sequential. So starting off, the planner. The planner takes a whole range of things into consideration. The size of the org, the goals of the org, the goals of the base, the capacities of the site, the roles of the site in the org. For example, will this be the headquarters, the command center for a system, a forward operating base, and if a production center for what? This often involves decisions beyond this particular base itself. If this base isn't the organization headquarters, where is it? If this is a production center, it is part of a production chain leading to the eventual industrial dominance of the org as a supplier of what? This may seem like a pretty overwhelming job, but imagine being a large organization not having anybody doing the planning. Yeah, it would be ineffective even if the organization did have a large committed group of people. In terms of a specific base, though, the task of the planner is to produce a list of exactly what this base needs to have included. How many hangars of what size, how many habitations, how many power plants of what type, and down the line. In addition, the planner might in fact be part of a team of players, one doing the industrial planning, one doing logistical planning, and another doing defense planning. So what support does CIG need to supply this function? Really pretty much just one thing: predictable, reliable data. Data on how much something of an extractor can get per hour, data on the turnaround time for a hangar, data on how many people can log into a single hab, etc. About just about anything. Without data, you can't plan. Game companies are often stingy with data because they want to be free to tweak it behind the scenes without notice, or because they feel that statistics break the immersion. But that's silly. In the real world, data is everywhere. Why in a game world having data be everywhere not be realistic? The next step is the designer. The designer's job is to take the list of items created by the planners and creates a layout that is efficient, effective, and aesthetic. Often in the process, they have to add items that weren't included but implied by the requirements of the planners. So, for example, the planners usually won't try to specify exactly how many linear meters of roadway and walkway will be needed, because that, of course, is driven by the layout. Also, miscellaneous convenience features generally are not part of the planners concerned. Now, before we get too far into the game support for designers, What the F is this huge tower that is implied to be a prerequisite for doing any sort of large-scale development? It seems like an absurd and wasteful expenditure. It looks like the purpose is to give a high-level viewport of the site, but why is that necessary when all the construction gear is already drones? At the small scale, we got our high-level perspective by just changing our viewport to the drone. Why doesn't this work for medium and large projects? It doesn't even give much more logical explanation of being able to pan, zoom in and out. Why presume that we have to build a tower in order to do a worse job of it? Let it be a glitz item for the CitizenCon presentation and then let it go. So we don't need a tower. What do we need? The first thing we need is a particular designation in the organization rights system for who is a designer and conversely, who is not. Having just anybody be able to add and remove from the proposed layout of the base is a surefire route to a complete mess. And the next thing the game needs to support are item statuses. When a building, road, or accessory is placed in the design interface, its status is set to tentative and indicated by a color, let's say pink. Tentative items are easy to move and delete. When you think that they're where you want them, you can then change their status from tentative to preliminary, which will cause a change in color, let's say to light blue, and which will then require you to return them to the preliminary state before changing. Then when you are really certain that a particular item shouldn't be further changed, you can alter the status to final, which will give it a third color, let's say white. The need for multiple statuses comes from the fact that there might be more than one designer collaborating. One might be doing the industrial design, another the spaceport design, and yet another defensive design, and not necessarily at the same time zone. So they need a way of communicating with the others how far they are in their part of the design. The third team member is the sequencer. Now, the sequencer, and this is going to be a separate right from the designer because not everyone is good at both of these roles. What the sequencer does is take each thing that the designer is placed and assigns to it a phase of the project, a stage within that phase, and then a priority within that stage. In addition, buildings may be labeled as critical, which means that if for some reason that building can't be built, let's say because a particular raw material is missing or because the sufficiently large construction drone is not available, then the project does not move beyond it. Now, why is sequencing important? Some examples were given in the presentations. For example, buildings have no function or life support unless they have power. So within a particular stage, the power plant will likely have a higher priority than any of the other buildings. Your first phase of construction might be the initial habitation buildings to get the base started, but then phase 2 might be the construction hub building, but first it too needs power and the landing pad to bring in larger quantities of materials to build and support it. Phase 2, Stage 2 might be then the refineries and extractors that are now needed to plan for circulation and roads. Then Phase 2, Stage 3 would be the extractors and related storage spaces, and so forth. If all this is making your head swirl, then good. You're not the person for this role, and they should find that rare person in the org who is good at this and give them the role and rights. Because a good plan and a good design with poor sequencing is just as likely to be a mess as a bad plan and a bad design. But sequencing serves another purpose. If your base is attacked and damaged, the construction drones, when activated, and I presume the construction drones are also the repair drones, will follow the original phase stage priority in choosing what order to repair the buildings. Because when you think of it, yes, the same prerequisites, such as wanting the power plants back up first, still applies as much as they did at the start. So all that brings us around to our final team member, the approver. The approver, well, they're the client. When the plan, the design, and the sequence all have come together to their satisfaction, the approver changes the status of either a phase or a stage on all the buildings within it to approved for construction. And then if somebody activates the drones and materials are available, the construction drones get right to work according to the approved design and sequence. In a small org, does all these have to be separate people? Of course not. I'm describing a process for getting good results, not necessarily the number of exact separate people. But I am saying that it should be separate designer, sequencer, and approver rights that the org leader can assign so that the right tasks are being done by org members or associates with the right talents. Do I have to go through this process if I'm just designing my own personal hideout? You should, and you will definitely get a better result for having done so. Now for an update on our giveaways. We have the giveaway for the Ray Captains members for a pair of VKB Space Combat Edition joysticks that are just getting started, but has a low threshold for finishing. Plus, we have our Grow the Channelship giveaways with Zippy Zazzy Zeptic Zephyr Zeus 2 Cargo CL, for which you only need right now only 85 more subscribers to give away. Plus, further on the 20,000 winners' choice of either the marvelous multiplayer multi-role mining meta, the Arasta, or the brand new big box Bargain Bazaar, the Merchantman. One entry per video. Be a member for automatic entry with each video, or comment and somehow include the secret word. And the secret word for this video are the names of any of the 4 team members I created to describe the base building creation process. Fly safe, keep it real, and I'll see you in the verse. This is Danny Raymond for Ray's Guide.